you'll just see me as a workaholic who only cares about money and cares about getting to the next status and the next level. And that will absolutely drive a wedge between us. And why am I so passionate to know this? Because I did it. I'm not just like, this isn't just theory, like this is what happened, right? Yeah. So if you're listening and this is resonating with you, it's because that's okay. Welcome to Married Making Millions with James and Angela. And the last episode we talked about was 10 reasons why entrepreneurs, business owners, and their spouses typically get divorced. And we covered that in kind of detail. And then this episode, we wanted to talk about some practical tips and solutions. Not that these are all the right tips and solutions, but some practical ones.
Yeah, things that we've been through all of these problems, and so just tips that we feel like have helped us in the past. Like he said, it's not the only solution, and it might not work for everybody, but they are practical tips.
So let's get into the practical tips. The first one that we talked about was work-life imbalance.
Yep.
And I think we've talked about this in other episodes. Yep. But one of the best ways, I mean, there's a lot of ways. So we'll just give some like top ones. So one of the best ways that's worked for me as kind of the main business owner, if you will, is the calendar and calendaring. And what does that even mean, James? Like, I don't even understand what calendaring is. Well, early on, that's what I thought. I didn't know what calendaring was. How do I calendar? Like, my calendar looks wicked empty. Like, what do I do? Well, when you dive into books and podcasts and other things, talk with other business owners about what that means, you'll understand that like even the smallest things should go in the calendar. Your day should be blocks of time that you've set for specific tasks. Now, my wife is not a task, okay? But until the habit is created, and until we work through those imbalances, your wife needs to be a task. Your kids need to be a task in that calendar. So I know that sounds maybe insensitive to a lot of people, and they're probably like, oh my gosh, like you're so insensitive. Yes, that may sound insensitive, and we had that conversation early on. Like, I'm not just a task. Don't just put me in your calendar. Like, no, the important things go in the calendar. The important calls, the important business meetings, the important family time, the important events go in the calendar. And so literally, if you look at my calendar, it will say podcast with Angela. It will say lunch date, breakfast date, dinner date. It will say James, private time. It will say like work's done time. Like you need to block those times out. Early on when I was doing this, I didn't do any of that.
Right. We didn't share calendars either. So very similar to a budget, which we'll go over in the next couple, but you are budgeting your time essentially. So we now share a calendar where before we had separate calendars. So I knew we had dentist appointments, or I knew that Lyle had a doctor's appointment, or I knew that I was going to visit so-and-so, but he didn't know that. And so I think combining your calendars along with budgeting your time in those calendars is kind of one of the most helpful things that we found.
Yeah, so it might sound very like task oriented, but I think if you change your mindset on it being a task and it being what are my priorities, those are the things that make it in my calendar. I have a couple text messages from people that, hey, like, can I get some of your time? Can I call you? Can we talk? No, like, you need to talk with, my assistant to schedule time because she's controlling those types of meetings. Other than that, I can't catch up with you. Like, I have specific things at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then it's family time. Like, everything after 4 o'clock, ideally is family time. Now, cleanliness of theory, mess of reality. It doesn't always work like that. Crisis can happen in the family where you need to step away from work. Crisis can happen at work where you need to say, honey. And that's where the spouse and the business person, whether it's the husband or wife, need to understand, and we talked about this on the last episode, is that couple that we were talking about, she didn't understand that the business doesn't turn off.
Right.
You know, when you open a retail business like a Crumble, the day you have that grand opening, there's no turning it off unless you go bankrupt and you close the doors. So you need to have that communication of like, hey, let's calendar. Let's really get it all in here from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m., 5 p.m., bedtime, whatever it is. Let's get stuff in there. Let's work together. Now, some pro tips. I work on Outlook, and Angela has a work email through our company, and so she's on Outlook as well. And we don't always mirror that. Sometimes things show up in iCalendar, which we don't love, but sometimes they happen to show up there anyway. So we try to keep everything in Outlook if we can, but find a system or platform that you like that works.
Another plug, something that I haven't tried, but I would like to maybe move us into, is there's a lot of systems out there like Skylight or those ones that you put on the wall. It looks like a calendar, but it's digital. So I know that's just one brand, but there's a lot of different ones out there that if you don't love Outlook, or if you don't love iCal, or whatever your spouse is using, maybe look into something like that where you guys can both be satisfied with the system that you're using, because it is that important.
We should reach out to them. I wish we were sponsored by them or something. That'd be good.
We'll try it and let you guys know.
Yeah, we'll let you know.
All right, number 2, financial stress. And I would say, just like budgeting your time, a budget is a good place to start, but it's not even necessarily, it is budgeting. That's a good practical tip, is that if you haven't started a budget with your spouse, which if you're opening a business, I'm really hoping you have, but
what's that look like? What is
making sure,
like? Break it down in case someone's like, I hear this word budget, it's like this unicorn word. What do you mean by budget? What are the categories? How do I set that up?
Where is your money going every single month? And we've used a few different platforms. We're actually in the process of switching over to a new platform, but every dollar has an allocation. You know where every dollar that comes in each month is going. And you give it a spot to go so that you are keeping track of your finances. Maybe we should do a whole episode on budgeting.
We probably should, yeah. Talking money together can be friction, can be stress.
Absolutely.
Not even just talking about it, but looking at where it goes. Like, oh, you went to that store how many times this week?
And those are serious conversations that need to be had, and that's why you need to budget. But I think financial stress within business, especially starting a business, often comes from not understanding how you will be gaining money or losing money as you open a business. So making sure you have that type of conversation with your business partners, with your spouse. I didn't fully understand. I mean, there was a lot of seasons
I didn't fully understand either.
In our life where we were pinching pennies, I guess, for lack of better terms. James was starting his financial business. I was still teaching. We were living on like $50,000 a year.
Yeah, maybe.
So our budget obviously looked very different at that point in our life. And when we were getting out of debt, that was our main goal. So our budget was geared towards that. But I didn't fully understand what things would look like as we got into Crumble. And so I think trying to have that conversation openly and honestly with all partners in the business is another
very hard,
practical tip.
Yeah. It's definitely a practical tip, and it's a tough conversation to have, but make sure you do have it. Hey, when are we going to take distributions? How much are those distributions going to be? Are we going to get any lending? Are we going to put in our own capital?
Right.
What does it look like if my spouse is working? What are we going to pay her? Because I'm pretty sure we paid you like dirt. I mean, I made dirt as a salary, but you... Yeah, basic employee wage. So we made basically nothing, but that was our expectation. The only expectation, and we talked about money with Jeff and I talked about money, and our other partner, Steve, as well. Great guy. But we didn't get like really granular. We just knew we needed to make the business a success. And what that meant to us was like, don't take any profit as long as possible and put it back into the business to grow it. And, we didn't know much. Knowing more what we know now, I think maybe we would have taken a little bit more profit off the table so we could have lived a little. But what I will say is it paid off in dividends, and it was incredible that we did it that way because we have very little debt on our business, which is awesome. And that allows us to leverage it down the road for other things. So all that to say is the financial stress can be really heavy. And if you don't communicate it and set a plan with your spouse first, and then talk with your business partners as well, that can be a big challenge. So I would say two things. One, work on a budget with your spouse and yourself. And what does that mean? Okay, I make $30,000 a year. I make $50,000, $80,000 a year. My electric bill is this. My gas bill is this. My food bill is this. Like, you need to know roughly what those are. Yeah. Anything after that, your mortgage, electric, food, gas, blah, blah, blah. Anything after that is fluff. Then it's Netflix. Then it's, right?
Right.
But it's not fluff. You need to have a place of where it goes. So after you've paid everything, and then you've paid some fun stuff, your Netflix, your gym, your spa, membership, whatever, then it should be savings, investments, retirement. Your debt should be before that. So if you have any debt, it should be
paying
necessities, bills. It should be debt. Then it should be Netflix, fun, gym, spa, nails, hair, savings, investments.
Right.
And I would even say all the fun stuff should be after the savings investments.
Yeah.
Because we're not saving enough as Americans these days. So anyway, I could talk about finances for a very long time, meeting with hundreds of clients when I was in the financial industry. So we could give some tips and tricks down the road, but you've got to have a budget. And you need to know where your money's going. Praise the Lord that we had a little bit of a financial education before we got into Crumble, because we had some savings. We were out of debt. And so we're very blessed and grateful to have that. But the financial stressor is important. So practical tip would be get a budget and freaking talk about it. You have to talk about it.
There's tons of apps out there. There's free apps. There's ones where you can pay $99 a year.
The new one you just
so
found?
We are trying out Monarch. I don't have enough information on it to
AI,
say it's awesome or not awesome. So far good. But yeah, we have switched. We've tried YNAB, You Need a Budget before. We did love it.
It was good.
There was a couple things that we wanted to try differently. And we've done like the old Dave Ramsey, like cash.
Yep.
I loved that.
Piece
Especially
of paper.
if you are getting out of debt.
Cash is the best.
Cash, there's just nothing. It's kind of a pain because we don't really live in a world of cash, but that was a huge life lesson. But there's so many apps out there. If you just Google like budgeting apps,
test them out.
You name it, it's there. So get yourself a budgeting app and get on a budget. All right, what's number 3?
Lack of communication, and we really just touched on that. I mean, communication is the number one thing I think that struggles a lot of marriages, or makes a lot of marriages and relationships struggle.
People don't want to talk.
They don't want to talk. I'm kind of the talker of our relationship. Angela's a little less talky, but she likes to talk. When you get her going, she'll talk. But the lack of communication, just about everything, is detrimental. Because what happens, and if you're listening to this and you are a business owner, spouse, husband, wife, and you've seen this, like you've been there. Your husband, he's working, 50 hours, 60 hours, 70 hours, 80 hours a week, and he gets home and then he's on his phone. And then he's, putting the kids to bed, kiss goodnight, quick story, pray, whatever, right to the office. And you guys don't talk, and you're just passing in the night, and he's doing it for the family. I'm doing it for you, honey. I'm doing it for you. When in reality, the truth is he's not. Maybe a little bit of him is doing it for the family and for the legacy, but he's doing it for himself, or she's doing it for herself, and that's okay. Like, I freaking love business. I love creating things from the ground up, and I'm not doing it for my wife. I am a little, so I don't want it to sound like I'm just a crazy person. I am doing it a little because I want the nicest things for her, and I want to take care of her really, really well, and my family. But ultimately, I love what I do. I love creating and creating something from the ground up. So if you don't communicate, if I don't communicate that with her, that this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, you'll just see me as a workaholic who only cares about money and cares about getting to the next status and the next level. And that will absolutely drive a wedge between us. And why am I so passionate to know this? Because I did it. I'm not just like, this isn't just theory, like this is what happened, right? So if you're listening and this is resonating with you, it's because that's okay. It's okay to be freaking passionate about your business and to love it, but talk to your wife about it. Talk to your husband about it, right? Yep. I don't know what you'd say about that.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is to find the time to talk. And that's where I think a lot of times we get stuck, is because they are working those 40, 50, 60 to 80 hours a week. And so it's hard to find a time or to feel like you're valuable enough to have that conversation or to have that time with your spouse. So it kind of goes back to the first one, right? Have that time set aside, budgeted, if you will, to have those conversations. And early on it was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but that was enough to get the ball rolling to communicate on things that were important. So make sure that there is time set aside, like I said, even if it's 10 to 15 minutes, consistently, to have those hard conversations, whether it's about money or business or just like making each other feel important. Hey, I really appreciated it when you did this week. Or how can I be of better help to you this week? How can I serve you this week? How can I serve our business this week? Just asking each other questions, getting to know each other again, spending time together. So it doesn't have to be a date. It doesn't have to be an hour long, but set aside 15 to 20 minutes just to communicate and have those conversations. And I promise it will go a long way.
Yeah, 100%. And we messed that up big time early on. Like I was the one that wanted to just fix, right? Just let's fix it. And so I would just nag her to just tell me what you're thinking. What are you thinking? And then it would be this explosion. And I'm not proud of that. And that was definitely a fail and a screw up. But, want to share that because maybe that's you. And that's okay, but you got to get over that. And we're not perfect, and we still a lot of times mess up with the communication, but we know that it should be top priority. And it really is the key to the success of our marriage, because if we can communicate, then we can work through problems together, no matter how hard they are, no matter how soft they are or easy they are. If we just talk, then eventually we'll be able to work it out. Right. So.
And I know there's people out there who will say, well, my spouse won't talk to me. We've done this for 10 years.
I know, I hear that all the time.
And they won't communicate with me. I've tried. I think my response to you would be then, what has your communication been to them? Every time you talk to them, are you putting them down? Are you, just pulling out all the things that they did wrong this week? Are you, talking all about the things that you need for yourself to be done? I think years of listening to that, or years of listening to discouraging messages will shut your spouse down. But I do believe that you can get out of that. I think by trying something that's encouraging, or, telling them the things that you did appreciate about them that week. Some of the other things that I mentioned, try doing those, and I think eventually they might start to open up a little bit. So we just have to be really careful with the way that we're communicating. And our words are so, so powerful, especially as women. But just in general, our words are powerful. So have a little bit of hope and faith, because there's definitely years where I was not encouraging. I was probably more discouraging than anything. But you can get out of that. And communication can be encouraging, uplifting, and a good thing.
Yeah, find common ground. Go do an event or something together that you both enjoy. Or if you maybe feel like you can't break through to the other person, go do something they enjoy. Just because they enjoy it. Be with them and communicate, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, what's the next one? Different priorities.
Yeah. Yeah, I think...
Practical tips. on different, I mean, again, I think it goes back to communication.
It does, and scheduling again.
Yeah, you got to talk about what your priorities are. But I think it goes back to the family vision. Is there a family vision? Because priorities are almost like, these little goals. Like what's a priority to Angela? Is it a priority to James? Does it lead to what our ultimate family goal and vision is? And we've gotten relatively clear within the last couple weeks, actually, just recently. And we kind of had this long-term vision, but we've gotten relatively clear on what our true family vision is. And does what James is doing on a regular, daily, weekly basis, is it moving towards that vision, or is it moving away, or is it moving sideline? Same thing with Angela. Is what she's doing daily, weekly, monthly moving us towards that vision, or is it away? If it's away, then there's a conversation like, hey, I thought our vision was, if it's not, let's discuss it, let's talk about it, what's happening, what do we do, how do we move in that direction? I don't think it's wrong to have different priorities, but I think what I will say about that is, if your priorities together aren't in the same path, it's just like to use an old Bible term, if you're not yoked and going in the same direction, like oxen or cows or whatever you want to call them, right? Horses. If you're not plowing the field in the same direction, it will never get done. Yeah. So, I think that's just a good conversation. And as the leader of the family, us men should cast that vision to our wives and to our spouses. What is that vision? Is it godly? Is it spiritual? And again, it doesn't have to be in that realm if that's not where you're at. But for us, is it a godly vision? Is it a spiritual vision? Does it move the kingdom forward? Does it move my wife forward, my daughter forward? If it doesn't, then we need to realign and reprioritize. Yeah.
But sit down and talk about them, which is where number 2 comes in with communicating. You need to know what your priorities are.
Yeah. Number 5.
Role confusion. When both partners are involved in the business. And we talked about this before in our Crumble story, along with just the problem that it can be. I think for this, again, you need to sit down and talk about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and if the role you're in is the role for you. We talked about how I was in a management role when we first started Crumble. That was not my strong suit.
She's not a hammer. She doesn't drop the hammer on the kids.
And then as we progressed, I was able to move into more of like an HR role, or just onboarding, directing, training. That was my strong suit. And so playing to my strengths versus my weaknesses took time, took communication, took conversations, hard conversations. And it was over a period of like 2 or 3 years before I ended up, maybe 2 years, before I ended up in that role.
Yeah.
But I think when you're both in the business specifically, you need to have those hard conversations of where you fit.
Right.
But let's talk about when you're not both in the business. I think a lot of times more role confusion happens when you're not in the business together. Who is in charge of bills at home? Who's in charge of making sure the kids get to sports practice? Who's in charge of charge of grocery shopping? Yeah. Who's in charge of making sure the trash cans get out at night? Silly stuff like that, but I think that's where it gets more frustrating in the home.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Again, as the leader of the home, the husband needs to direct that. And the wife needs to have an opinion, right? And you need to work together through that. If the wife is better at finances in the home, then the wife should do the finances. She should do the budgeting. If she's not as good at that, then guess what, husband? Suck it up, do your 60-hour week of work, and make sure you get the family budget done too. Or maybe the family budget should be done first.
Right, or maybe it's something you guys do together. Maybe you're both working outside of the home, and
we did that for a long time.
You're putting in your 40, 50 hours, and then you're in your calendar, because you're calendaring, you set aside Sunday evenings, or whatever the time frame is, to do the budget together.
But Angela, I worked so hard. Why don't you do it? Right? We see that
and
so
that's
often.
Where
we see that so often.
That is where it goes.
And that's happened to me many times. That's happened to you where we don't want to do it. We'd rather scroll or we'd rather do something else. But if we're honest, we know what we need to do. There's a conviction in our heart when we say, no, I don't want to do that. There's a conviction, unless you're just totally seared conscience and you don't care about life or your family at all, which I doubt the people listening to this don't care. I'm sure they do. There's a little conscience, there's a little prick in your heart that says, nah, dude, you need to get your butt over there. You should do that. The question is, do you listen to that or do you not? Because every time you don't listen to that, you're searing off a little bit more of becoming numb to that task that you should be doing as the leader of the house or whatnot. And so, so practical tip there in the role confusion is like, again, it just goes back to communication. Talk about it, but ask each other.
Like, what do you want to do?
And what are your strong suits within the home, right? Because the home is really a small, little, tiny business. It's got a budget. It has income. It has loss. It has expenses, and then it has investments and savings. And so I think if we look at our home as a business, how do we manage our businesses really freaking tight and well, but we are loose in our home? I know we've done that in the past, and so it's just this constant balance. We are absolutely not perfect at doing any of these things, but we've failed at them so many times that they're top of mind now as we go through them.
Yeah.
So figure out those roles and try to work through that and work as a team instead of working against each other.
For sure.
Number 6, jealousy and resentment. Jealousy and resentment. What do you think about that? What are some practical tips on jealousy and resentment?
This is a hard one because when we talked about this as an issue, we talked about it in two forms, right? Jealousy that your husband or wife is spending so much time in the business that you feel like you're kind of cast to the side, you're leftovers, you get all the whatever's left of them. And then we've also talked about like people in the business, right? Like becoming so close with coworkers or things like that. So there's kind of two forms of jealousy within this. But again, I just want to say, like, communicate about it. And that sounds so cliche.
James, Angela, you guys all you keep saying is communicate. Why in the world? There's got to be a secret sauce.
No. Because for sure, this is something I struggled with. This was probably one of the number one things I struggled with when we first started Crumble. I felt like James didn't care about me. I felt like I was leftovers. I got whatever time he had left, which was not much. He was tired. He was exhausted, and that's what I got. I felt like he was growing closer with his coworkers. Like he wasn't spending any time with me, but he was investing all this time into these people. So jealousy very quickly became a thing. And there was no magic sauce. It was, James, this is how I'm feeling about it. I understand that it might not be truth, but here's how what you're doing makes me feel. How can we work on this? How can I change it? And it was just having that conversation. It was also though spending time with him and more like finding my role within the business. That was also a solution for us. That's not going to be a solution for everybody. But being able to work alongside of him and not for him, more with him, was kind of a solution that we came up with.
Yeah. I agree with you, obviously the communication piece, but then finding out where you kind of maybe fit in there, and then is what you're feeling actually happening? Like it is...
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Is it just a feeling, an emotion, or was it truth? Right. And I think it was both.
Yeah, for sure.
It was, but it was...
Because I knew the business needed a daddy, and I was the daddy. I was the daddy smashing through cookies every day.
But it was also hearing your perspective of like, no, you're not leftovers. No, you're not whatever. This is just what we need to do right now to build the business.
Yeah, and it's a season.
Understanding your perspective.
Yeah.
But then I got to be with him more because I got to be a part of what he was doing. And I think that's where some of that kind of left or changed. And like I said, that's not going to be an answer for everybody. But maybe you can do the books from home. I don't know. Maybe you can, I don't know. Yeah. There's a lot of roles within businesses that I think if you want to be a part of it,
you can be.
You can be.
There's a way to help out. Marketing, social media, doing events, going to do events together. Like,
right, there's
that's always
fun things.
Yeah, that's
and
always
you can
fun
bring kids
to do.
That.
Kids, you can do events. People love that stuff. So, and I think that goes right into number 7, which is unrealistic expectations. That jealousy and resentment could lean into these unrealistic expectations of, well, you know, I thought you were supposed to do this, and I thought because you were going to be the business owner, you were going to be home, and well, now you're not. You're always in the store, and you're flying in to help save the day, and the team loves you for that, and that's great. But you're not home with me, and you're not home with our kid, and so, you know, I'm sure people out there have done this. Like, we're not the only ones, and so if that's you, you know, we feel you, we hear you, and there's a way out of it. There's a way to have a good business, a good running business, and a solid freaking marriage and a solid family. But you do have to cover those expectations, such as, like we talked about earlier, finances. Hey, honey, the expectation is we're going to make no money for the first 12 months. For us, it was about the 36 months.
36.
Yeah, 36 months. But we had what we needed. We had food. We had clothes. Our lights were on. We did okay. We had a great job. We worked a lot, but our lives will never be the same. And so we went through that 36-month period of pain and all these marital challenges and business challenges, and we've come out the other side. Now, had we known stuff, and maybe had there been a great podcast like this, hopefully it's great, we probably would have learned a little bit. I know I probably would have been listening to this while I was driving, while I was doing stuff, to help get each other on the same page of, hey, these guys are talking about communication. Like, we should start talking more about resentment, and are you jealous, and how can I fix that, and you know, what are the expectations that I haven't met, and let's talk about those. Whether it's financial, whether it's, you know, intimate time, whether it's time together, whether it's time with family, whether it's time off. Like, how do we figure that out? So,
and we talk about this often because expectations has always been a pain point for our marriage since like day one. So a practical tip that I have learned and that we have now communicated to each other is like, before, let's say we're going away for the weekend, right? I will say to him, or we're going on vacation, or we're going really anywhere. I will say, what's your expectations for this weekend? And he will say...
Nah, don't say what I would normally say. This is a kid's show. I'm just kidding. Family show. We're married. It's fine.
That was not at all where I was going with that, but okay.
All right, sorry.
He would say, I plan to work from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then I plan to hang out with the family and then work from 3 to 5 or whatever the expectation is. But then it sets up my mind for like, okay, now I know he's planning to work during these hours and I will make other plans. Instead of not having that conversation, going into the weekend thinking like, oh, my husband's going to be hanging out with us all day, all the time. He's not going to be on his phone. He's not going to be answering emails, which I've learned over the years that that's not really ever the case.
Every
and I'm
once in a
okay
while.
with
Every
it
once in a
because
while.
being in the business, I understood once I was in that role, when I played the HR role, it was harder for me to not check it over a week and have all these emails stacked up than to just check it for an hour a day.
Yeah.
So I understand that now. But my point was, just ask the question. We'll even ask it for the day. What's your expectation for today?
Yeah.
It's not a hard question, but it is life-changing.
No, it's good. I agree. And you've been doing that for a long time, so...
It helps.
Yeah, it helps. When we forget, though, that's when it gets dicey. So don't forget. Don't forget. Always ask what the expectation is, and then it just starts a good conversation of, you know what, this is what I need to do. I've got this coming in this weekend. I need to make sure I get this quote out. Blah blah blah. So, yeah. What's next?
Different visions for the future.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that. I mean, we had, when I came back from the conference, we had, what, a 3 hour, 2 hour?
4 hour.
Yeah, 4 hour What did we do with Lila? Did we just put a show on?
We had a babysitter.
Oh, that's right.
Got a babysitter.
We got a babysitter. We got a nanny for the day, and yeah, we spent 4 hours just writing and talking. And what do you want? Where do you see us going? Here's what I learned at this conference. This is where I think we are. Where's the future headed? What do we want to see? What type of freedoms do we want to have? Where do we want to be able to go? Where do we want to live? Where do we want kids to go to school? What do we want to give back to other people? How do we want to impact? What do we want written on a gravestone? I mean, there's so many things that you can discuss that should give you goosebumps. Like if I was talking about our team the other day with this, when we were explaining our business vision, Jeff and my business vision with the team, and like I started just getting emotional, started getting jazzed up, and I could tell just through the camera from other people that they were getting excited as well. And like, that is where you should be. You know, there's 4 levels of the entrepreneur, 4 levels of business. Just share this really quick. There's your survival level. Like, you're just starting, you're in sales, you're starting out your one-man show, you're solopreneur, you're starting out Crumble for the first time, and you're just trying to live. Like, you're just day to day, you're working 18 hours a day, you're trying to make money, you're surviving, paying the bills. The next is status. All right, it's been 12 months, you've made some money, you're still working a lot, but you want to start showing people that you make money. So you buy the new, Mercedes or G-Wagon or BMW, you get the new house, or you get the new clothes, you get the Rolex, and you want status. And there's nothing wrong with those things, but you get status. And then you finally learn that money doesn't bring happiness, and those things won't make you happy. And so then the next level is freedom. You get to this spot where you are financially free. You maybe don't have any debt or very little debt, and the money that's coming in is like substantially more than you actually need to live on per month. You can give away money. That brings you joy, and you have this level of freedom. But there's still something missing. And that thing that's missing is that vision. It's that vision and that purpose. And that's what the 4th level is purpose. And you're missing a purpose. Why are we accumulating so much money? Why are we accumulating so many relationships or friends or time or what have you? Why doesn't the nice things satisfy anymore? It's because you don't have a vision, you don't have a purpose. And so, it's important to align on those visions. Where does Angela want to go, and where is she passionate? Where do I want to go? Where am I passionate? Why can't there be a blend? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or where do they meet in the middle? That's
what I was going to say. The practical tip is when you have this meeting, because you've scheduled the meeting with your spouse, you're going to sit down and write down. I wrote down like what I want for us the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years. Where do I see us? What do I believe that God desires for us as a family? James wrote down what he believes and what he wants to see our family do and accomplish and achieve as a family. And then we took those, and a lot of them were the same because we've been together for 13 years. And I think after that amount of time, you do start to have a lot of the same passions. But that doesn't mean that that's the case. But like, how can you blend those? Work on taking 1 or 2 from each of your lists and putting them in your 1-year goals, your 3-year goals, your 5-year goals. But there has to be a aligned vision where you both are pursuing the same things. Because like James said, unless you're both going the same direction, passionate about the same things, you're going to go so much slower. But where we can be together on something, where we can say yes, this is God's vision for our family and for our future, I promise you're going to get a lot further a lot faster. So try that. Try making lists and seeing where they cross over, and also where you can kind of try to blend them together to make a vision for your family.
The last thing I would say about this is heavy stuff. If you're an entrepreneur and you're just a self-development junkie and your spouse is down here, I'm trying to see if in the camera here, your spouse is down here, trying to get them together on this vision is going to be really tough.
Yeah, but they have passions too. And I think taking those into consideration is...
It's a good step. It's a good step in the right direction.
Step that you need to take no matter what line your spouse is at. I think they will feel valued in knowing that you're their passions can be a part of your passion. You guys can pursue those things together.
So even if you're differing, just be aware that like it's important to talk about what each other's purpose may be. So
And that vision's going to push you forward
Yeah.
in everything.
Number 9, emotional exhaustion. What are some practical tips on emotional exhaustion? How about a vacation?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about a babysitter in one of the episodes. I think that's important. I think just spending time outside your home, outside your business. We prefer being outside, but taking the time to be able to do that, which is not easy, especially if you're starting up the company. It is not necessarily even doable. It is emotionally exhausting. I don't even know. There were so many times where I think that's when you have to say, we're going to do it anyway. That's when you don't want a calendar. You don't want a budget.
Right.
You don't want to have conversations. You don't even want to go on a date because you are so tired.
Yeah.
You don't want to do any of those things. And that's when you have to say, is our vision strong enough and important enough that we're going to do it anyway?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we did a couple things that were just like, we just got to get away for a couple of days. We did that a couple of times. It was really healthy.
And I think
we were right back to the grind really quick, but it was
if you can
healthy.
do that, if your business allows it in this season, by all means do it, even if it's just one night away.
Right. Yeah, 100%. So you got to try to find a place where you can recharge, and it should be. I mean, for us, it's like we read the Word, meaning the Bible, and I feel like for me in the morning, if I can have my morning routine time, if I can have my coffee, if I can read my Bible, do my writing in my journal, if you will, and if I can work out, like I really love those few things. If I can do those, like I can crush the day.
Go.
Yeah, I can crush the day. But that's not with my spouse, right? So there should be something else that you're doing maybe together as well. So the last one, number 10, is infidelity.
Yep.
So
the stress that business can bring in on marriages.
Yeah. I think it's not this isn't a light topic. It's not a very like, dude, just don't do that crap, right? Why would you even think about that? Like it sneaks in like super slow and sneaky, like the frickin' devil, a snake. It's you're texting with a coworker about work all the time, but it's about work.
Frequency, what is it? Friendliness and frequency or something like that?
Yeah, it's from the book, The Light Switch. Yeah.
Which we talk about in the last episode.
Yeah, good book, yeah. Yeah, frequency and...
But to your point.
And proximity and frequency. So the closer you are to somebody and the longer you're around them, it's just natural, it's science, it's natural that you begin to be attracted to them. And if you remember the example that I gave, it was the Coast Guard example. So if you haven't heard that example, please
go back and listen.
Go back and listen to that episode. Was it that story, our story? Might have been our story episode.
No, it was just the last episode that we did on these 10
on this
issues.
one, yeah, okay. Yeah, so check that out because that's hilarious. It's a great story about the Coast Guard and how we had a rating system. So anyway, check that out. But it's 100% true. Proximity and frequency will make you attracted to someone regardless of their rating scale. It's just natural. And so it's something you have to really watch out. You really have to be careful of. You really need to have, I would say one really good practical tip is good brothers and good sisters, men, women in your life that will be like, dude, what are you doing? Like they'll see it from the outside in.
Right.
I've been there. I've seen that. I've spoken with somebody, I think you maybe know who I'm talking about, and was like, yo, I don't know what's happening, if there is anything happening here, but like, doesn't look good. And so you just never know. I think the other thing is your wife or your husband calling you out. I don't think you shouldn't be offended by that. You shouldn't be offended by, that situation. I mean, I was working a ton in the Methuen store when we first opened, and this was a conversation that we had, like, you're there all the time, and it's all these teenagers, and, I'm just making sure, like, what's happening. And obviously there was nothing going on, but it's this frequency and proximity situation that can easily slip into a situation of infidelity, a text message, hey, let's go out for drinks later, and then boom, like you hear those stories all the time. So what are the practical tips? Brothers and sisters, people to keep you accountable, to watch your back, people to speak into you. I think vulnerability is okay. Like, I shouldn't be offended if my wife comes to me and says, yo, James, like, these are like 17, 18-year-old girls. Like, you shouldn't be around them this much. Like, that's not a thing. I shouldn't be offended by that. Same thing with Angela. Like, she shouldn't be offended if I, hey, you're talking with the HR guy, you're talking to this person too much. Like, why are you guys doing coffee dates? Like, that's just weird. Do a Zoom call. Like, what?
Right.
So I think that's a big thing, is it's okay to speak truth because it's in love and because we care about the marriage and the relationship. And I think it's the same thing for the people that you love and you care about. Like, my homies, dude, what are you doing? Like, she's 18, she's 19, like she's our employee. Why would you be talking to her like that? Why would you be texting with her outside of work? Like, it's just not okay. But those two things, proximity and frequency, will sneak in like the freaking devil.
And I think the last 9 things that we just talked about all contribute to
the last
one.
100%.
And so like James said, it doesn't happen just like that. It happens in a slow, sneaky pace. But if you're not doing the first 9 and putting energy and effort into those things, doing the practical tips for all of those things, that's when your guard is down for infidelity to happen. And I don't think it's necessarily just the business owner. I think if you're not doing those other things, you can feel lonely at home. You can feel less than, right? You can feel like those leftovers. You can feel not valued, not needed. And so you want to feel those things. You want to feel the validation. You want to feel valuable. You want to feel important. So being careful even on the other side of it, of making sure that you're doing those other things so that you're not seeking that outside of your marriage. Because with your spouse gone all the time, traveling, working, it's easy to seek that out into in somebody else. And so
that mailman be looking good.
Making sure, like he said, that you have accountability. You have a good group of women or men around you that are uplifting and encouraging encouraging you to pour into your marriage.
Yeah.
And also making sure that you're dating your spouse, you're putting that time aside, you are communicating, you're have that vision that you're both headed towards. So
if I could touch on that one last time, the people that are in your circle, I heard somebody say this once. If you have a friend, and you're going through a tough time maybe with your spouse or with somebody, and they say, yeah, man, like, what the heck is wrong with her? Like, dude, you should just tell her off. You should dump her. You should leave her. Like, she's an idiot. Like, that's not a friend. Especially if this person was at your wedding and heard your vows. A true friend would say, a true women's circle, a true man's circle would say, dude, sack up, go to your wife and talk to her about what's going on. Like, that, in my opinion, is a true friend. Right? He comes to me and he says, dude, what are you doing? What are you screwing around for? You gave a promise to this woman in front of me and a whole bunch of other people and God, and you said you wanted to be with her for better, for richer or poorer, better or worse, sickness and health, and you're messing around over here texting this person and you're saying that she's being clingy and needy? What's your deal? Like, that's a good friend. Like, I never want to be a friend that's like, dude, yeah, she sounds like a freaking jerk. Like, just dump her. You guys just get a divorce. No, you need to freaking work on that. Marriage is tough. It is hard. Really hard. Harder than business. Because I can't leave you. We're together. We can't go bankrupt, right? It's not how it works. And so you need to maybe inventory your friends. I'd like to get a few friends, but I don't know. I guess I have high standards, maybe. My time is really valuable. I want people to pour into me. So anyway, we'll talk about that later, inner circle. But think about your friend inventory. Take a friend inventory. And you really got to make sure those people are solid. So awesome. This has been a great episode. Share this with somebody that needs to hear it, that's married, that's struggling maybe, or that just wants some pro tips on some of those questions. Divorce is real. It's a serious thing. We want to help people through it. We also want to see people succeed in their businesses. Give us a follow, send this to somebody, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thanks.